What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Field Stormers. As always, I am your host, Mo Murphy, with my co-host in the building, Walker Bailey. Walker, what's going on, bro?
Not much. I'm disappointed after yesterday. I'm frustrated with James Franklin. Very frustrated, actually, from a 25-1 standpoint. But I'm going to give him another chance in a few weeks. I'll try to line up and beat Michigan. I'm sure that won't be hard.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we'll get into that. We'll get into that towards the end of the show because we have a special guest, and this special guest happens to be probably a bigger and more critical Ohio State fan than I am, and that's Jeff Hunt. He graced us with his presence on Field Stormers. Jeff, what's going on, bro?
Nothing. Great to be here, man. I think I've only been able to do this show like one time, so I'm happy to jump on. And I'm officially probably the most unhappy undefeated team fan in America. So I've got a niche.
Yeah, that's you know what though, Jeff, that's on you. But we're not going to talk about Ohio State first.
We're talking about a great
problem.
day.
I was about to say it's a great problem to have.
It is, Walker. You're not right. That was a great day of college football yesterday in all sincerity.
It really is one of those great problems to have. Like, as much as we complain, like I'd rather complain being undefeated than complain being a 2-loss team trying to figure out how essentially there's a road for us
undefeated. I don't have undefeated problems, but I have 1-loss problems. Like I like watching Ole Miss and Auburn last night was like pulling teeth, and Ole Miss was was literally never in danger of losing the football game, and it was just like pulling teeth.
It was awesome. I feel you.
And still ended up winning. So yesterday there was a lot that went on in college football. Obviously, like the biggest game of the day was Ohio State, Penn State. It went the way it went. If you're an Ohio State fan, as unhappy as you could be, you still walk out of there with a win. Bama beats Tennessee, beats them pretty handily after being scared in the beginning of the game. So that's the game I kind of want to talk about first. Alabama, Tennessee. If you look at the final score, you're like, Bama never had a fear of losing the game. But like the beginning of the game happened. Tennessee went up, if I'm not mistaken, 14-0. And it was like, oh, Joe Milton looks like a god. Tennessee looks really good. Alabama looks incompetent at times. And then next thing you know, like Alabama finally they flipped the switch and they looked like the Alabama that we're used to seeing. Tennessee looked like the Tennessee team that me and Walker thought was going to show up on that game on Saturday anyways. So they were a tale of two halves. So, Walker, I'll ask you first. What did you think about the Tennessee-Alabama game? Because I know you got some thoughts. You ready to talk?
It was it was 20-7 at halftime. Like Tennessee was up. Like it still never felt like they were in the game. Like Joe Milton made some plays, and then I came back in the second half, and he missed the first couple throws that were there, and I was like, there he is. I was like, welcome back.
Here's the guy.
Welcome back. I was like, there's the guy.
There's the guy we were talking about.
And then it felt like once things got haywire because, Alabama then gets the ball back and they hit one of those, like, very typical for this team's Jalen Milroe's deep ball where they busted coverage and he hits like a 60-yard bomb over the top and he walks into the end zone. And from that point forward, it felt like the moment just got so big. It felt like everything got so big and all the crowd noise started bothering Tennessee. There were false starts, all sorts of stuff. It just felt like the moment got super big and it snowballed and then it just got away and it was just over at that point. And then Heupel blamed the officials and
he did that long moment of silence in the.
There's so much there. I have so much respect for coaches that'll just walk in and be like, hey, you know what? This one's on me. It may not even be on you, but just walk in, wear it, get out of there. Like yesterday, the two biggest post-game press conference losers. Heupel, Shane Beamer. Shane Beamer has blamed everybody but himself for this just atrocious season that he's putting that program through. He broke his foot kicking the Gatorade cooler last week. And then he goes in and last night he was complaining about the visiting press conference room not being up to his standards. And it's like, who does that? Not to get like way off, and we'll stick with Tennessee, but like, who does that? Like, same thing with like, oh, I'm going to have a prolonged silence about officiating. It's like, dude, like your quarterback was missing open throws. Like, missing open throws. A lot of the penalties that did get called were penalties. Like, there were problems with that. Like, college football officiating is what it is. It's bad. Like, it's going to be bad going in. Like, I was complaining about officiating during the Ohio State game yesterday. And then I sat down after the game. I was like, you know what? That was not the problem. The problem was that Penn State couldn't move the ball past the 50-yard line. That was probably the problem. So I don't know. I just thought they got overwhelmed in the second half. And once it got rolling, Alabama's tough to beat once they get rolling. Like, it's a very old school 2012 Alabama. They run the ball really well. Veteran running back, just good enough at quarterback. They play defense. and they can hit you for the explosive play. Like Milroe can beat you over the top. That's probably the one place that he can very accurately throw the football and beat you over the top. And it didn't feel like he threw the ball to the other team a lot yesterday. Like it felt like he actually kind of just stayed in control, and that's why they pulled away.
Yeah. So Jeff, I want to ask you, like, based on the Alabama-Tennessee game, obviously you being an advocate, like Ohio State fan, if you're anything like me, like, okay, because I do Field Stormers, I'm really watching all these other games after, like, post Ohio State. But in a sense, I really don't care about the end result because I'm going to come on Field Stormers, talk about it. But my team won, so I get to walk away with that. So the question I want to ask you is, like, should the rest of the country fear Alabama? Like, they took their loss early against Texas, but now it looks like this is a typical Alabama team that can win a national championship from here on out. So, like, in your opinion, should people be afraid, like, of if they beat LSU, hypothetically, they beat LSU, now we're talking about Alabama probably ends up possibly in the SEC championship, and they play Georgia. So is that a fear of, like, if Nick Saban could get to the big dance, should people fear Alabama?
I think absolutely. I think this is a team that's got, like, I've watched a lot of Alabama football this year, either on tape or just been able to watch the game. So I've just been fortunate. So, and I'm kind of like Walker. Like, I'll watch, like, there might be just a certain team that I just get to watch a lot. So you get a really good feel for a team. They're growing. Walker touched on it. Milroe is growing. Like, he's getting better every well, I don't know if every week, but he's getting a lot better, and he's figuring out how to, like, put these games away and win the games, and when to take the shot and when not to take the shot. And that's exactly what Milton was missing yesterday. Like, when he had, the chances to, like, really put the pressure on Bama, he overthrew or threw it out of bounds or off a guy's hands. And those little things slipped away, to where Milroe, I think, feels confident about, like, it's not even about managing the game. It's just knowing when is the right time to do this and that. I think they look really good. And, if we're going to judge Georgia just by the team that I've seen this year, outside of, like, I think it was the South Carolina game that I watched, they haven't looked dominant, world beaters. I think
Kentucky game. It was the Kentucky
game.
The
Kentucky game. Good call.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah, looked very good. The offense, everything they ran, I was like, this team can beat anybody. But obviously with Bowers out, that's huge. I absolutely think that by the time Alabama, assuming they stay healthy and Milroe doesn't regress, young quarterbacks can. Like, people can just throw the kitchen sink at him. I thought Tennessee's defense was pretty good. So I thought that was actually a really good test for Milroe and Alabama. They won the game. If they get to that SEC championship game as it stands right now, I definitely give them a chance to win it. Nobody ever wants to play a physical. Anytime you play a team with that many athletes, that great of a coaching staff, all these things, like, it's hard to win even when they're down, let alone if they start getting better. So Alabama is 100%, in my opinion, a national title contender as we sit here today.
Yeah.
So I have a take on this. I actually have a take on
Walker.
this. And I have said this before on this podcast. Like, if you're a good team, I legitimately think, like, as far as quote unquote, like, fearing Alabama, I think everybody should pretty much fear everybody, because I'm not sure anybody's that good.
Yeah, that's a big take I have for the whole weekend.
I get that takeaway. Like, you've been saying that for weeks, but I think yesterday showed it more than anything. Like, when you talk,
like, ask
struggles with Arizona State, like nobody is. Michael Penix Jr. put his stamp as the Heisman favorite last week against Oregon, and then goes and plays absolutely terrible against Arizona State. Like,
he was seeing ghosts.
Nobody
was seeing ghosts last night.
Like, nobody is so far superior. Like, I think there's 8 to 12 teams that are in the same realm of, like, any one of those teams, if the things shake right, could win the national championship. Like, it's that.
Like, Oklahoma probably should have lost to UCF at home.
Absolutely,
like,
should have.
Houston too.
Like, and Texas could have lost to Houston. Iowa did lose to Minnesota. I mean, it happens every week. Like, everybody should fear everybody. Like, there's nobody's safe at this point. I think too, like, that's why, like, the playoff discussions can be so interesting, because we could have, like, 8 11-1 teams or something like that with a bunch of conference titles slipped in. Like, we could get to a point where it's like, hey, Washington's 11-1, but Oregon State went 12-1 and won the Pac-12, and you're just like, well, I guess Oregon State's going to the playoff, because, like, why can't it happen? Like, who's to say? Like, nobody's safe. Like, every game is up for grabs. That's the big thing with Ole Miss for me. Like, on a personal note, it's like I go into every week and just fear every single. Like, they play Vandy next week. We're not safe.
And if you get one guy that plays bad or one guy's not on it that week, like you lose. Like it's just
yes,
100%.
Especially as spread out as a quarterback play is right now. If your quarterback's not up to par that week, you can lose because almost every team you play has a quarterback that can get it done. Like there's very few just awful, terrible, don't have to worry about that quarterback this week. Like almost
and then
every
the other
team
thing is
got somebody.
There's very few quarterbacks that you walk in and you're like, oh, he's gonna take the game over. It's very much a lot of average to above average, but not a lot of terrible and not a lot of elite. Like there's a lot of just middle of the pack quarterback play. Like
the one guy that you thought would be elite got 2 losses. Like the one guy that you thought would be elite and walk in there and take over a game, he's got 2 losses, which we'll talk about in a second. That guy has 2 losses right now.
That's because of insubordination and incompetence. As far as the head coach goes. He continues to hire Alex Grinch at every stop. But that's or nepotism, whatever you want to call it, just taking care of buddies.
A few weeks ago, I thought Texas was going to take the next step and be a dominant,
and they really haven't.
And they haven't. And then, now Ewers, I'm not sure what the injury is going to be. It's college football. You're not really going to know except for week to week. But they took a step back. Penix at Washington. The biggest flaw is the guy does not want to move in the pocket.
And I think that was such a surprise. Like I was surprised that Michael Penix got exposed against Arizona State. Like
I watched
that there. But if he would have got
they're not bad.
Oregon, if he would have got exposed against USC, if he would have got exposed against Oregon State, it's understandable. Like those are good teams that could play great football on any given Saturday. But like to play the way you played against Oregon and then turn around and like your exposure of coming away with the takeaway, like Jeff is like, he does not want to move is against Arizona State. Like Arizona State is a bad team.
No, Arizona State looks
like Arizona State is a bad team.
I'm telling you, hey, that's
Arizona State's
coach.
Good.
They're going to get it right. They're going to get it right. Like I know the record's bad. They've caught a bunch of bad turnover bounces and stuff this year. Sometimes the cookie just doesn't crumble your way. Like, ask Arkansas. Like Arkansas lost to State yesterday, but before that, well, yeah, but like then you look at it and they lost to Alabama, LSU, and Ole Miss by a combined 13 points. Like they were in every single football game. Like sometimes it just doesn't crumble your way. Like I think Arizona State's one of those. And like they had Penix seeing ghosts, and it's a first year coach. Like they just need one to where they can build off of it. Like that would have been the one. And listen, Washington is losing last night if they don't like return an interception 90 yards.
Yeah, that the game was lost, like an inexplicable. Because
ASU was going in, like they were going in to score and put it away.
It was over. There was about 3 or 4 losses yesterday that a team just gave away a win, and their fan bases have to just be
UCF. UCF is one where like I understand like you're not on the same caliber as far as expectations against Oklahoma, but you had an opportunity to steal one against Oklahoma. You let them escape, which I think that's the biggest takeaway of like yesterday was the fact that a lot of teams were able to escape. And like with me and Walker doing Field Stormers pretty much every week, we talk about some of these teams that we don't value as much as everybody else does. We don't think may be as good. I tweeted yesterday, I said, Oklahoma is not a good team. Walker said this on the podcast, and as of right now, he seems to be right. I still think Oklahoma walking away, skating by with a win on UCF, I think Walker is still correct. Just because you skate by with a win, I tweeted that while they were down, obviously, they might have lost the game. Just because a team, the number 6 team in the country, skates by with a win against UCF doesn't make Walker wrong.
Like I said last week, I said last week that they would lose in Lawrence to Kansas, and I still think that's going to happen. Like they're going to lose to Kansas. That's what's going to happen. They're going to lose to Kansas, and it's going to go up in flames.
So I want to ask you this, Jeff. Like I'll turn the clock to you on this. Okay, so after Saturday, me and Walker have talked about like I did this last episode where I listed like every team in each conference that has an opportunity to make the playoffs. This was last year. Obviously, it changes, so I'm not going to go through the list, but most conferences, there were 4 to 5 teams, if not more, that last Saturday had an opportunity. It's starting to shake it, but we also said it'll shake itself out. Did Saturday change the fact, like, there were like 25 teams that had an opportunity that could make the playoffs based on being able to still have the possibility of winning their conference, still have the possibility of winning out. A few teams lost. A team like USC, right? They got 2 losses now. We think they're out the window. Oregon almost got upset. Washington almost got upset. How close is the playoff race in the overall projection right now? Like, there's some of those teams still have an opportunity, but I think Saturday made you lay back and be like, I still think the 6 or 7 teams that I think are playoff possible are sitting at the highest realm, and those other teams that still had a possibility might be out the window.
Yeah, I definitely have it. And again, I always project of like, I don't give like best case scenario for these teams. Like, I don't like right now, the Penn State's 1000% still eligible for the playoffs. Like, we talked about it before the show, tiebreaker and all that, but I'm like, I don't see the path of them, beating Michigan in 2 weeks. So like in my mind, I kind of count them out, but roughly I've got it down to about 9 teams. ACC's down to Florida State, and that's it. I don't see a path for these other teams.
North Carolina ruined that.
Yeah,
it ruined that.
No matter even one of these.
That was the major nobody is good game.
Yes,
that was the big time.
Virginia's a bad football team, and I shouldn't. Yeah. Virginia is
they're bad, Jeff.
They're less talented football team.
They're bad, Jeff.
So you start eliminating USC. I had USC out after the Notre Dame game. I think Notre Dame's out just because 2 losses is almost impossible, especially without a conference championship, regardless of what you do. So like
the public nature of their losses.
100%.
The way it went down, having 10 men on the field, all this other stuff where it's just like that's not what good teams do. Like the public nature.
And I'm already penciling, Georgia and Michigan in just because I think that at most I see 1 loss on their schedule. They're both going to get in with 1 loss.
Penciling Georgia in?
I am penciling Georgia in, even though I think Alabama can beat them. Like I said, I think that they got enough to. At worst case, they're going to lose that 1 game. I don't see them getting left out.
I think we might get them.
I hope so. I'm not even rooting against
Bowers, I think, and I'll say with Georgia, I think now that Brock Bowers is injured, I think that plays a big factor on like the Ole Miss Georgia game.
For this, Ole Miss is gonna score.
Ole Miss can absolutely beat Georgia. I should say.
I would say this. It's tough. It's tough to imagine them losing both. Like losing one or the other. It's tough to imagine them losing both.
Yeah. So it's which I don't know which Georgia I'm getting, but at worst case, there's 2 spots open, and so what these Pac-12 schools are just cannibalizing each other. So I would imagine Oregon or Washington's going to get in. It's the way it appears, and they're good enough. But that was before last night when I assumed Washington would take care of business. So
I told Mo last week, Oregon State's going to basically put this thing in cruise control for the next few weeks. And they're going to get to the last 2 weeks of the season, and they play Washington and Oregon back to back.
Yeah.
And I told Mo that they're going to win both games.
I could believe. I like Oregon State a lot.
They get Washington and Corvallis, which is brutal for Washington because Corvallis.
They're going to win. Worst case, they're winning one of those. I totally agree. Like they're definitely winning one of. So they're ruining somebody's season. But that's the thing. The playoff race is one thing. As far as just enjoying the competition of the season is really good. I think
it's only 4 teams.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's another thing. I'm glad you said that. Yeah. This year specifically, like about to expand the playoffs, anybody who was against it, and I know Jeff was with it, I was for it, Walker, you're for it. We knew how more teams would expand the landscape of college football. You're seeing it with Missouri possibly being able to recruit 5 stars that would never.
They're building. They got something going. They've got something going there.
They really do.
We're a good team on top of that right now. But like we knew what the expansion would bring. We all were for it. But anybody who was against it, like you kind of look sick in the face because there's a possibility where the 4 best teams that get into the playoffs this year, you might walk away and not feel like those are the 4 best teams, or more teams were deserving.
Here's what I would ask. Like,
not the 4 best teams, but other teams deserve a shot as well.
We've sat here and had this conversation so many times, especially the 3 of us, whether on or offline or whatever. The people that are just steadfast, love the 4-team playoff, never want it to change. Did they actually watch more than just a couple college football games? Because it sounds like that's people saying like, well, I'm not going to watch anyway. So I would rather there just be 2 games to watch as opposed to people like us. I'm like, holy shit, I can't wait for the opening weekend of college football playoffs in 2025. Like that's going to be the
12.
greatest weekend of college football in my
Yes.
life. So I just wonder sometimes if people that it doesn't benefit them to have more games. So it's easy just to be like, now let's keep
See,
it at
like,
4.
I know, and my thing now is like I look at this as a fan. Like, Ole Miss could run the table, go 11-1, and they literally have no chance of getting it.
No, and that's terrible
because of how it's going to shake out. Like,
Yep.
Ole Miss could go 11-1, and they're going to the Sugar Bowl, and who knows if they're one of the 4 best teams. They're going to get punished for losing by 14 to Alabama in Tuscaloosa, like a million teams have done before.
And wouldn't
and
we love?
teams will lose again.
Wouldn't we love to see just some kind of crazy thing like Iowa go to Ole Miss or something week 1 of the playoffs? Like that sounds like the most fun thing in the world to watch.
Random matchup that you'll never get in life.
They're like, oh, I like shout out to Stu. I know how you think this is going to go, but we just saw Virginia beat North Carolina. We just saw Arizona State should have beat Washington. Like, yes, just yesterday alone, like, is enough proof that like anything can happen, especially if you got some dudes out there who are ready for the game, coaches who get them, get a good strategy, a good game plan. Like these teams can win these games.
So I want to ask this, and this has been a conversation I've been beating a dead horse essentially on my end. It's Sunday. We're talking college football on a Sunday. The NFL is currently going on, and instead we're talking college football because obviously I feel like all 3 of us enjoy that more than watching what's going on in the NFL. I woke up today, and I just had this feeling. I looked at the schedule. I did see you Sunday, and I was looking at the schedule. Do you guys feel as strongly as I do that college football is a better product than NFL? Like, I'm sorry. I just think college football is more entertaining than the NFL. And I don't think we've had the right enough matchups. I don't think teams have lived up to the expectations. On Sunday, you don't get the Virginia beats North Carolina and the nail biter. You don't get the Utah USC, down to the – you don't get that enough, where in college football these past few weeks has been like, oh, my God, like you feel one way one week, you wake up Sunday and you feel absolutely another way about certain teams the exact next week. Like I think
it's just what you care about. I think it just matters where your fandom lies. Like I think it changes from from person to person. Like I think it's just going to change. Like I watched a ton of college football the other day, and like there'll be a bunch of NFL games on tonight, and I'm going to torture myself watching baseball. Like that's going to be like that's just kind of how I am. Like that's what I'm going to do. So I just think it depends. Like I think it varies person to person. Like there are a lot of people that will tell you, that they think college football product is bad because the players aren't all that good, which is fair. Like you watch a bunch of stuff and you're like, I can't believe that those mistakes, those penalties are happening in a game. I want to watch the best talent in the world, and so I'm going to watch the NFL on Sundays, and that's fine. Like I don't have a rebuttal for that argument, but like I just care more about college football.
It's what you care about, and it's what you know about too. Like I could not tell because, like Jake, for instance, I work with a lot of people who, if they watch a college football game, it's basically the team they like, which is pretty much either Ohio State or they might have a random other team that they like. Then I'm like, man, did you see the North Carolina game? They see the highlights and stuff and like, oh, that looked like it was a close game, but they're not, and I'm not shaming them or anything. I'm just saying this is the truth of it. So like, as to where I enjoy tuning in and I watched James Madison Thursday night, really liked that game.
I've been watching college football Tuesday, Wednesday,
right?
Thursday.
Me too. So I really enjoyed it, but like someone who's like a huge, probably New York Jets fan does not care about James Madison playing, and since they're not involved in it, it's the same argument we talk about the NBA. If you don't watch the NBA, most people that don't watch it also say they don't watch it. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's because you don't watch it. As if you do watch it and you get involved, like you're like, oh, this is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying this. So I think it's really just what you're attached to, what you care about, what you know about, you know what I mean? Like, so I think it kind of just goes both ways.
Yeah. We have our first semi-coach firing of the season. Arkansas is starting to clean house. They fired the entire offensive staff. So it feels like Pittman's kind of just trying to get out in front and save his job. It's not.
They cost me a lot of money last year or yesterday, so I feel like I actually fired them. Like I sent a couple really nasty. No, I'm just kidding.
When your offensive coordinator is responding to student emails about what he should call on 4th and 1, it's probably over.
Yeah,
it gets bad. So before we talk about Ohio State, Penn State, USC, let's just get that conversation out the way. Lincoln Riley is holding himself back from being considered a great head coach. And I say that for the simple fact your defense has been bad. Every year that you've had one of these great offenses, Oklahoma, USC, we've seen it for 6, 7 years now, that like you've had the players on defense, you've had enough talent. Some of the guys that you had on defense are doing really good in the NFL. Kenneth Murray, got a couple corners. Like you got some guys, some dudes from Oklahoma that can ball in the NFL. You got some dudes from USC that can ball in the NFL that went this year. All your offensive guys we know produce in the next level, but you're sitting with 2 losses at this moment. Is Lincoln Riley's friendship with Alex Grinch going to be the detriment of his coaching career in college?
Before Walker goes, because he knows way more about this than I do. All I'll say is USC is one of these teams I've actually watched probably 3 full games of them. I don't understand what the problem is. It other than just saying that they're like disinterested. I honestly don't know what the problem is, because like when you ask me about Caleb Williams, the only answer I have is like, I don't know, maybe he doesn't care, like, because I don't see what the scheme problem is when I see him playing good and I see him playing bad. I really can't figure out, other than just like effort or intensity or caring about the game. It's all intangibles that I come up with. This team's a mystery. Like that Notre Dame game is a mystery. It's like, why would Caleb Williams play that bad? I honestly don't have the answer. So then I know Walker knows way more about the situation.
Well, because I mean, like, take Notre Dame, for example. Like, they lined up against a team that, like, for all the things that he's not as a head coach, Marcus Freeman's still a really good defensive mind. Like, he was obviously an elite defensive coordinator. Like, they schemed some things up and got USC's offense to make some mistakes. And at that point, every USC game is over, because every opposing offense is going to score almost every single drive. Like, that's how that goes. And that stems from, hey, I'm taking a new job, but I'm not going to fire the defensive coordinator who has prevented me from winning national titles for years now. And he stuck with him. And, like, I mean, Utah scored at will pretty much last night with a quarterback who Utah didn't even want to play. Like, they wanted to play the other kid, not Rising, but the other backup, because this kid was so bad. Yeah, like, they wanted to play Nate Johnson, and they couldn't play him. Utah couldn't score on Baylor, and Baylor's atrocious. But they go to the Rose Bowl or whatever. They go to the Coliseum or whatever, and I'll tell you what, they're getting up and down the field. Everybody's running wide open. Bryson Barnes looked like an NFL prospect last night, the way they had him rolling around. Like, and they came back and, like, Barnes made one mistake and USC's defense kind of capitalized and returned it for a touchdown. That game was really never that close. And as soon as they got the ball back with 2 minutes left, you're like, USC's cooked. No shot they can prevent them.
Utah's they're the opposite.
There's not five better football coaches in the country.
I don't think. And I said that I said that years ago.
We both have
about him. Like I love the way they play. I love to watch them play. I love the intensity, the game planning. They are such a good football team. To be able to do what they do with backup quarterbacks is almost impossible in college football. And they're there. Like, you don't want to play that. To go back to your conversation, Mo, about the playoffs, that's a team that I would have loved to had a shot at the playoffs last year. Like, go ahead. I dare you to go into Utah and fight that team for 60 minutes. Like, nobody wants to do that. I don't care who you are.
And you've seen it from all circumstances of
they're moving to the Big 12 too. Can you imagine what they're going to do to those teams on the line of scrimmage?
Make them quit.
Like Utah has a future of like success set up for the next 10 years. They'll probably, I would probably say more often than not, Texas and Oklahoma are gone. They probably are the highest chance of representing the Big 12 in the playoffs. We're going to move to a 12-team playoff, so they're really going to have a chance.
Technically, they're the best program in the Pac-12 right now. Like, over the last decade, I would consider them the best program in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I would say especially consistently. So I just think I think for me with Utah is like, even going into that game, like when USC lost to Notre Dame last week, I'm like, Utah is just the kryptonite for USC. Like, they had 2 losses last year. Their 2 losses were to Utah in the Pac-12 championship and in the regular season. I just think USC it's a mental thing at that point. Sometimes like you see it in the NFL, right? Like, Dallas is kryptonite to San Francisco. It just seems like, hey, when we walk into this game, we haven't beat this team. We can't beat this team. We possibly could beat anybody else. Sometimes it's just a mental aspect.
See, but I don't think it is. Like, I think it's a style of play thing because Notre Dame's the same way. Like, they get into these heavyweight, knockdown, drag out, fights with these pro style teams that are really good on the line of scrimmage, and they can't win because they can't stop them. Like, that's why Notre Dame beat them up. It's why Utah beats them up every year. It's why Oregon's going to beat them up. Like, that's just how. Like, I think that's it's style of play thing. It's why he didn't win at Oklahoma in the playoffs.
Yep. And Walker, that's sweeping college football. I as an Ohio State fan, I complain about it every week. Like, why every team doesn't have a pro style package built in for this exact situation. It's driving me crazy. Like I get it. Running out of the shotgun is fine when it's wide open, but sometimes you need to. I don't know. You need to have a different look, and you're a lot of that's coming back this year to where you're seeing some of these teams like that are able to, just bully a team because of just packages and manpower.
Yeah. So real quick, Jeff, we might be done with this conversation by the time you got to leave.
That's fine. That's fine.
This is what we're going to close out with. Ohio State, Penn State happened. Jeff got to leave here soon. So why not just go ahead and close out with this conversation, the game of the week. I will say this. I won't go into the game. We'll talk about it in a second, but I will say everybody, typical Big Ten game, boring and low scoring and da-da-da. There's 3 great college minds sitting right here, right now. All of us said the way the game looked is exactly how it went. Points will be at a minimum. It's going to be a low scoring game. Now, it was lower than we thought. We more at 24-20, 23-21, whatever it was. I said 27-24. So it was a little bit lower than expectations, but we knew this was going to be a dogfight. Walker said going into this game, points are going to be at a minimum. Mistakes are going to be at a minimum. Every mistake is going to be highlighted because the team might capitalize off of it. Ohio State came out undefeated. At the end of the day, we can say what we want about Ohio State, but they remain 7-0. They're going to be they're ranked number 3 in the AP poll. They have 2 big time wins. So, Jeff, I want to get your opinion because your evaluation of our Ohio State.
Let's just fast forward to 11-0. They're going to be 11-0 going to Ann Arbor. Let's just go ahead and go.
Yeah. So that's pretty.
Walker's right, and that's exactly what it
they
should
set
be.
themselves up as. But Jeff, yesterday, I know I seen your Twitter. You had thoughts throughout the game. You didn't have as many thoughts as I thought.
I actually remained
after the game.
I remained pretty calm.
But what was your overall outlook of Ohio State beating Penn State?
So my overall takeaway with these games is like I've been through all of it. I've been through the high scoring, and I'm always like, so I look at this. First of all, I know they won by 8. Everybody knows that it was a little different than that. They basically won by 14 points. I mean, I know they didn't, and they could have lost. But what I'm saying is, like, until very late, they were up 14. So I'm like, if it would have been, 40-26, everybody would have been happier. You know what I mean? So, like, sometimes I was very impressed with how the defense kept in the game. Like, they stayed in the game. They never let down. They never let the big plays happen that have just killed us for the last 3 years, probably. I was very impressed with that. Knowles, here's what I said this. There's my takeaways. This was Knowles' best game as a coach at Ohio State. For all the money he's making, this was the game that I was like, I felt like this was definitely Knowles' stamp on this team. I thought Ryan Day I think he still sometimes gets caught up in a mix between watching the game and between coaching the game. I like the emotion, but sometimes I think that he comes out of timeouts. Like they never have a good play out of timeouts. They never have a good play. Like they essentially gave away
12. They had 12 on the field out of a timeout yesterday.
Yeah. Probably one of the worst things is they come out in the half, they're receiving the ball. That's why you defer. And then they go 3 and out and they give that possession away. So they gave a possession away in a game, didn't take the field goal when everybody on the planet knows he should have took that field goal late. Ryan Day made a ton of mistakes. I mean, they did a ton of really good things. Overall, I was happy. The combination between the Purdue game and the Penn State game, I feel better about Ohio State moving forward because it looks like they can get into a rock fight and come out on top, which I don't think they could have done the last couple years. I think Penn State, played one of their worst games of the season. I know Buckeyes caused a lot of that. I'm not trying to take credit away. Like we all say, you win, you win. The Buckeyes played really good. They had Aller just completely. They had him a mess. It was his worst game. Both young quarterbacks looked pretty crappy at times. These teams are dead even. Whoever won was going to be in the exact same position they are right now. Overall, I'm actually more optimistic about Ohio State going forward, even though I know that I see the ceiling of McCord right now. We'll see how it plays out through the season. I'm with Walker. Anything less than undefeated going into Ann Arbor is an absolute would be a failure. So they at
this point, yes.
But at some point though, this was circled on the calendar. Everybody said Penn State this, Penn State that. Like, these are good teams. Ohio State won it. And I will, as critical as I am about Ohio State, Alabama beats Tennessee something like this yesterday. And I'm like, good win by Alabama. I don't criticize it. I don't go any more depth to it. I'm like, good team came in and you beat them and you go home. So it was actually a pretty good win by Ohio State. They've got a lot to work on. They got a lot of growing up to do, and they've got a huge, a huge gorilla in the room, coming up in November. But I would say Ohio State though. The other thing I would say about Ohio State is, do I think they could beat every top 10 team in the country? Not necessarily right now, but I also can't say that they should be ranked lower because they have one of the best resumes in college football, regardless of how good I feel they are.
Yeah, 100%. So Walker, what do you make about the game? Let's not beat up on Ohio State too much. What did you make?
I'm not, but I still feel the same way I felt all year, is they need a head coach and they need a quarterback. Like,
you get no argument here.
Yeah, like Ryan Day kicks when he should go and he goes when he should kick. And McCord has really, really bad pocket presence. Like, I thought Ohio State was great in both lines, on both lines of scrimmage yesterday. That's why Aller played so bad. It's because he was constantly under duress. Knowles was just one step ahead of whoever was calling plays for Penn State and was like blitzing into the perfect spots. And, hey, they're going to roll left here. Like, I did my homework this week, so we're going to call this blitz. And Aller kind of boots out and gets sacked. Like, that's just, I thought Knowles was fantastic. Like, he's the Broyles Award front runner right now by a long shot. Like,
I think close. So if this keeps up.
But yeah, I mean, I think they don't have a quarterback, and I think that Day makes incorrect decisions a lot of times, but none of that matters when you're winning football games. So, but I almost in a similar way to how Jeff is. Like, I know what's coming. Like, I know what's coming and know that those things are not things that they can do and beat the elite of the elite teams, which is the standard at Ohio State. Like, you win national championships. Anything less is disappointing. And so, flag, no flag, but like McCord, there's no way McCord should have been rolling left when all the routes were going the other way and turning a defensive touch, like causing that play to happen. Like, that shouldn't happen.
That's a great point by Walker. I want to put that out there. Even though the touchdown, the defensive touchdown for Penn State was called back, and that was a hold. Like, and I get it. You got to hold Harrison. The point is that play did happen though. Like, McCord, he put himself in a position to have that happen. And these are things that you have to stop doing. Overall, he's played a good season for his talent level. But there's a ceiling.
I just don't get it with him. I know, I just don't get it with him. Like, he either stands in there and has no pocket presence and gets rocked, or he rolls out when he doesn't need to roll out and gets rocked. Like, he gets himself hit all the time, and he doesn't have the athletic ability of some of Ohio State's previous quarterbacks, where he can get himself out of trouble when he has no pocket awareness. He gets out there and he just has to go down. Like, he literally just has to, I'm getting sacked. It's time to go down. I think he's a completely different quarterback when he throws it to anybody other than 18.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
We had this conversation, Walker. I said he's the best quarterback in the country. Yeah. Anybody outside of number 18, he's
when Igbuka's in, he's definitely more balanced. That's for sure. Of course, when you got what I'm saying is, if you got another NFL receiver out there, then you're obviously.
I wish I had said it. I wish I had said it before the game last week, but I remember thinking when we were talking about Igbuka's injury, I was like, oh, he's the punt returner. Like, I was like, that's that's a bigger deal than the receiver part, is the punt returner. And then Ohio State kicked that punt off their leg or whatever. Yep. And I was like, yep, I should have said that. That ended up being a big deal because punt returners being out, it's possessions. Possessions matter. Yeah. Like, you losing possessions or whatever.
Field position as well.
Basically, I'm going to have to take off here in a second. This has been awesome. But basically, my takeaway is yes, like if I going into the future, I'm more optimistic, but I see everything that everybody else sees. But I'm also not going to apologize for a big win in Columbus and just enjoy it. When it was circled on the calendar, this is a huge game. Ohio State won the game in pretty decent fashion. Like even to win by 8 is pretty good for a top 10 matchup. So like, I'm also not going to take credit away.
I won't hold you to it, but Sunday, October 22nd, did they beat Michigan in 5 weeks or whatever?
As of right now, no. I don't think anybody beats Michigan until maybe the playoffs as of right now. As where we sit, just they're a team that's just they're in a groove and they got just
they're very good.
Everybody's at the right age. McCarthy's playing good. Like they're just a very good team right now. But we all know that with injuries and everything else that happens, we have no idea what the college football world is going to look like in a month.
At least you've seen them win in bad weather because you know it's going to be snowing.
I do. I tell you, I feel so much better as me, the way I watch Ohio State after the last 2 weeks than I did this time last year. And I know that's crazy because we had an NFL quarterback on the field, but so I feel like we have a better chance now, even though I feel like we have less of a chance in the playoffs, if that makes any sense. It doesn't.
Yeah. So Jeff, I know you got to go. So we appreciate you for jumping on.
This was awesome. Thanks, guys.
With your presence. We just going to touch over 1 or 2 more topics, but everybody make sure you go follow Jeff at jhunt006. Jeff, we appreciate you for coming on, and we will catch you later. Hopefully later in the season, you grace us with your presence one more time.
Yeah, let's do this again. Thanks, guys.
All right, bro. All right, so Walker, real quick, really just I guess we really could just close out with this. Talked about a lot about Ohio State. Obviously, like, yes, you picked Penn State, and you and me were talking shit yesterday or whatever, but everybody swore I was mad when it was just like, no, this is just me and Walker, and we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to do our Field Stormer show like normal and nothing, no hard beat. Hey, you know what I'm saying? But is Clemson's run first off, okay, I think this question should be worded different by our prez, Chris. Yes, their run on top is officially over. Like, it was over last year, essentially. Like, and there was an expectation maybe they could bounce back when the ACC. Clemson's done. Like, TVD doesn't play and you lose to that Miami team. I think that's detrimental. And I seen somebody say, hey, God lives on name, image, and likeness. And you got 3 losses up to this point? Probably I don't know what the rest of Clemson's schedule, because honestly, like, if Clemson's not on top, I don't pay attention to them that much unless Dabo throws the brand in our face and we're more unpacking whatever Dabo said as opposed to what Clemson got going on a Saturday. Is their run on top officially over? Yes. How over is it? Is it to the point Dabo is not Clemson's head coach next year would be the follow-up question I would have, and I'm going to hand it to you. Is Dabo's Clemson head coach next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think he won't do the portal.
To be fired. I want to throw this out there. I don't think he deserves to be fired. When you win a national championship, when you've been to multiple national championships, you buy yourself. He's won 2? He won with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, right? So you buy yourself, when you win 1, you buy yourself another 5-6 years of a grace period before, and you'd have to hit the absolute downfall to get fired. My thing is is it bad enough in Clemson that somebody comes and scoops Dabo away from Clemson? Like, is it bad enough?
Who's coming in and hiring and knowing that he hates NIL and that he doesn't want to use the portal? Who's hiring him? That's
kind of the problem. But then, so now if you're a Clemson fan, are you upset that you're tied to Dabo for the grace that he's giving you the multiple national championships? Like, you got to be upset that you're tied to Dabo, right?
Yes. You say, thank you for your service. We have everything that you did for this program, but this is no longer working. That's the way that it is.
You said, you think he'll be the head coach next year, so you don't even think that's on.
Think about it like this: just because you get married, you can get married to a woman, you love her, you love her to death. Like, when you take the altar or whatever and you say your vows, you get 10 years in, and it's we had a lot of good years, but this isn't working anymore. I don't even want to wake up and see you anymore. That's just how it is. I just don't this is not working for me. For our kids, for everything, this is just not working. We're going to get a divorce and we're going to just, go our separate ways. We're going to acknowledge everything that happened. There's not going to be any ill will. Like, we're going to work everything out. Like, but this is just not working. That's where they're at. You know, they got married and they had like 10 good years. They had 10 good years. They won some championships. You know, they dominated the sport for a long run. They, you know, took Clemson to a place that they had really never been before. And it's just kind of over now. Like, it's kind of, it just is what it is. Like, they're just kind of, they are what they are, as long as he is going to be kind of the way that he is. I don't want to use the portal. I don't want to use NIL. I'm not a fan of all that stuff that you need to win in this current juncture of college football. Like, look at the difference between Clemson and Florida State. Probably similarly talented teams going into the offseason last year. One of them goes and gets Keon Coleman, who might be, like, worst case is the second receiver taken. And it changed everything. Like, it changed the entire season. They went and got a bunch of dudes in the portal and got better. Clemson didn't get better. And so they got passed by. Like, Miami went and got dudes in the portal. They're recruiting at a high level. They're going to go get more dudes in the portal this offseason. And they're going to get better. And, like, all these programs in the ACC are doing that. Like, Louisville did that. All these programs are doing these things, and Clemson's not, and that's just how you get passed by. It doesn't matter how many good high school kids you recruit when you can't supplement them, because you're never going to bat 1,000 in high school recruiting. I don't care how many stars are next to their name. You're never going to bat 1,000. And, like, that's basically what he's saying. Is, like, I'm going to have to bat 1,000 or close to it to compete. And if you can't do that, you're not going to compete. Well, that's where they're at. Like, they've clearly had some misevaluations, and they haven't been able to overcome them. And everybody else is overcoming them by supplementing with the portal, and he won't do it. And, you know, that's his prerogative, but he also can't be upset when they fire him for those prerogatives.
Yeah, and I fully agree with you. Like, it does come to a point in time. It's just sitting there, and, like, the marriage was great when everything was great. But, you know, we've been down this road where you see it's just going downhill from here. And like to elaborate on yours is, like, are we doing this for us, or are we doing this for the kids? And that's what it comes down to, is, like, are we doing this because we want to fix this relationship? We want to get going with the times of college football? Or is it we're staying together for the kids? Are we just, I'm not going to change, you're not going to change, but we're here because we don't want the kids to have to deal with us splitting? And that's essentially what it is. And I think, you know, it's kind of inevitable. I think Dabo's time in Clemson is winding down. He could be out in the next 2 years. I think that would make the most sense. So that's what I want to close out on. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for listening. We recapped this wonderful Saturday on a good old Sunday. Everybody enjoy watching the rest of NFL. We appreciate you for tuning in. We appreciate you for listening. Catch us later this week on another episode of Field Stormers.